Jungkook looked at Jimin as everyone left. What happens after that will surprise you. An unexpected moment managed to thrill the hearts of the army around the world. Not from the stage or in the middle of the camera's spotlight, but from an event captured silently, full of tension, emotion, and silence that holds so much meaning. By the time everyone had left the room, only two figures were still standing, Jungkook and Jimin. And that's where the moment that left many speechless happened, when Jungkook stared at Jimin in silence, long, deep, and meaningful. This incident is not part of a show or interview. According to internal sources, the atmosphere occurred after an important closed-door meeting attended by all members and the management team. As the room began to empty and the staff began to leave one by one, Jimin remained in his chair, looking down. Jungkook, who was already standing, did not leave immediately. He turned his body, stepped slowly toward Jimin, and stared at him. A person from the staff who witnessed the moment described the atmosphere as a shaking silence. No words, no sounds, just eyes talking. Jungkook's gaze is said to be full of things never seen before, such as wounds, regrets, and perhaps even the courage that has been held back. While Jimin, who initially lowered his head, finally looked up and looked back, even if it was only for a few seconds. What happened after that shocked everyone who knew this story. Without warning, Jungkook stepped forward and grabbed Jimin's hand, then pressed it slowly, as if he wanted to convey something too heavy to say. Jimin looked surprised. His eyes widened for a moment, but he did not withdraw his hand. He seems to be holding back very carefully. No dialogue was heard, but sources said that Jimin nodded slowly, then turned his face, wiped the corner of his eye, and said quietly, "Thank you for staying." The words were simple, but they contained an explosion of incredible emotions. For ARMY, who has long followed the dynamics of Jungkook and Jimin's relationship, this moment was like a fragment of a puzzle that finally fell into place. There has been a lot of speculation over the years about the distance between them, about the wounds that were never discussed, about the longing that was never conveyed directly. But this moment seems to refute everything, or rather confirm that all this time, their feelings were deeper than anything that seemed on the surface. After leaks about this moment spread to fan forums, social media was immediately flooded with reactions from the ARMY. Many admit to crying just imagining the incident. Fan art, video editing, and poetry began to appear. Some depict Jungkook in his military uniform staring at Jimin dressed in casual all-black, a contrast that reflects their changing world. But the taste between them that remains the same. A senior K-pop observer said that the relationship between BTS members often goes beyond the word co-workers. They are like family, brothers, and sometimes even like one soul in different bodies. When Jungkook looks at Jimin like that, it's not just out of love or a sense of loss. It was the way a person conveyed apologies, promises, and misses all in one look. For Jimin, that moment was not an easy one. In many previous interviews, he often said that he was a person who kept a lot of things in his heart. "I'd rather cry alone than burden others," she said in one of BTS's documentaries. That's why when Jungkook looked at her that night, he felt like all of his buried feelings had been touched again. According to a staffer close to Jimin, Jimin has been noticeably quieter than usual lately, especially after a stressful few weeks. Many fans speculated that the temporary separation due to conscription and possibly also minor unresolved conflicts between the members contributed to the weight on his chest. Jungkook's gaze that night might be a release of all the tension that had been held. Jungkook is known to be an emotional person, but he is also very careful when delivering something important. He often prefers to show his feelings through actions, not words. When he decided not to leave the room right away like the others, it was his decision not to repeat an old mistake, to let the distance widen between him and someone who meant so much in his life. His gaze at that time was not just a form of attention. It was an unspoken apology, a desire to start over, and perhaps a promise in silence. Some fans even called it the most honest look Jungkook has ever given anyone. After their hands clasped each other for a while, the atmosphere became even more emotional. Sources say that Jungkook opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but ended up only sighing and nodding slightly. Jimin replied with a slight smile, but his eyes were teary. There were no hugs, no tears shed, but the energy between them was so strong that anyone who witnessed it knew that it was an important moment. An unforgettable moment for both, and for anyone who knows the story behind it. Interestingly, after the incident, the other BTS members were said not to have directly mentioned it, but the atmosphere between them changed. Taeyong is seen sitting near Jimin more often in the next few meetings. RM was seen patting Jungkook on the back several times in an unusual way, like an older brother who knew his younger brother had just gone through an emotional storm. Suga, who is known to be very sensitive, made a comment on his radio broadcast that made the army suspect he was alluding to the moment. Sometimes, the most important thing in our lives happens without a sound. Only we and one other person know, but that's enough to change everything. Many things can happen in a person's life, but few moments are truly ingrained in the heart forever. The moment between Jungkook and Jimin that night was one of them. In a noisy world, their silent gaze is a declaration of love, understanding, and feeling that ordinary words may never describe. For ARMY, it's not just about two idols taking care of each other. It's a story of friendship, forgiveness, and the courage to remain present even when you're no longer in the same place. And for Jimin and Jungkook, the world knows they may not always talk, but when they look at each other, all the important things have been said. After that thrilling moment of silence, Jungkook and Jimin's footsteps were finally heard down the long hallway to the exit of their training building. Although there were no clearly spoken words, the atmosphere between them felt different, warmer, but also heavy, as if they had just unpacked long-buried feelings. Jimin walked slightly behind Jungkook with a downcast look, but his pace was steady. Jungkook, despite his calm face, seemed to be holding his phone tightly, as if trying to hold back something he still wanted to say, but hadn't found the time yet. Arriving outside, they did not go directly to their respective vehicles. Instead, according to a witness who was at the site, the two chose to sit on a small park bench on the side of the building. No cameras, no fans, just two hearts looking for a way to get back to understanding each other. On that bench, they sat side by side in silence for a few minutes. Some sources say that Jungkook finally opened up, albeit quietly and barely audible to anyone around. "I've been silent too long," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "And I know, that's wrong." The sentence was like opening a gate of emotions for Jimin. He did not immediately reply, but finally, he turned his head and said, "But you're back." Such simple words melt the atmosphere. Jungkook smiled a little, then looked at the night sky for a moment, as if calming the storm that had shaken his chest. "I never really left," he added. From that night on, changes began to appear in their interactions. Although the two are still going through their respective military schedules and personal activities, their communication has become warmer. Jungkook was seen texting other BTS members more often, and Jimin began sharing behind-the-scenes photos that he had previously kept to himself. The observant army noticed that during one of Jimin's recent live broadcasts, he had played Jungkook's solo song by accident, but did not rush to stop him as usual. Instead, he looked at the camera, smiled faintly, and let the song flow until it was finished. When asked by fans, Jimin only replied, "Some songs do hold memories that cannot be forgotten." Jungkook, on the other hand, began to speak more openly about his feelings. In one of the interviews with military footage leaked to the media, he said that there was one person in his life who became a source of strength when he felt like falling. Although he did not name names, the fans knew exactly who he was referring to. The other BTS members are said to be relieved to see that the relationship between Jungkook and Jimin is starting to improve.